Last week I thought to myself, what kind of roster could you build if you filled it with the best players you could, but kept your spending under the salary cap? This video is my answer to myself. So the salary cap we're working with is the official one that was released. I made this list beforehand, still fits in $167 million. And now the cap space we're working with is that $167 million. That's up more than 10 million from last year's cap of 155 million, which of course works a little in our favor. And all the cap hits I will be referencing for players are according to spotrac.com, and more specifically are those players' 2017 cap hits, and those numbers were accurate as of the 5th of March. As I often do, I'm using Muthead's Squad Builder, but this has nothing to do with Madden. The website is just a nice way of presenting this information. In the top right corner, I'll be showing the total cap space, and the current number is based on the $167 million minus $12.5 million for 27 bottom-of-the-barrel contracts. So this is based on a 53-man roster where the 27 remaining players that aren't starters are paid the bare minimum of $465,000, so depth, of course, would be an issue for this team. Without further ado, let's get into building the team. I'm not going to say the exact cap hit for every player, I'll just round it down, but the exact number will be subtracted from the cap space number. So we start with our left tackle, Tyron Smith, who has a cap hit of $8.8 million. Next up at left guard is Ramon Foster, who has a cap hit of $3.5 million. And the next jump up for pretty much the next best guy as well is already up to $5 million. So in terms of value for the player, Ramon Foster was as good as it got at the left guard position. Onto the center, another Cowboy, Travis Frederick, with a cap hit of $4.5 million. Our right guard is Zach Martin, a cap hit of only $2.8 million. And that's actually why some of these Cowboys players are here, because of course they're very good, but they're also still in their rookie contracts, which makes them a lot cheaper. And on the subject of rookie contracts, our right tackle is Jack Conklin, and that is the offensive line there. Jack Conklin, $3.6 million cap hit, and that entire offensive line has a cap hit of $23.3 million. Travis Kelce is our tight end with a cap hit of $5.4 million, and now we move on to the wide receivers. Julio Jones is our number one receiver with a cap hit of $13.9 million. So no small number, but every team needs a superstar receiver. Julio Jones is ours. Lining up across from him, bargain bin time. Allen Robinson only costs $1.1 million against the cap. An absolute bargain for the player you're getting. And then in our slot position, this guy had to be a slot receiver. It's not just the third wide receiver. Doug Baldwin with a cap hit of $9.6 million. So these are our receivers: Julio Jones, Allen Robinson, Doug Baldwin. And altogether they cost $24.6 million. So these three guys cost more than our offensive line. Now I'm going to move on to the fullback, because this is a bit more of an interesting one. I knew I wanted Patrick DiMarco on the team, however, he has just served his contract, therefore he's a free agent right now, and there is no way to know exactly how much he will be paid. I've gone on an assumption of $2 million against the cap. That is less than Anthony Sherman's, and Anthony Sherman is the highest paid fullback in the NFL. Patrick DiMarco, I think, will be around that number, especially in his first year with bonuses and stuff. So Patrick DiMarco, I'm counting as a cap hit of $2 million. Now on to the running back, and this guy was the cheapest player on the entire team. David Johnson, depending on your team alliances, the best running back in the NFL, only has a cap hit of $799,000, less than $1 million. This guy is cheap as chips and as good as anybody you'll find. And then for the quarterback, there is only one quarterback you can pick when it comes to trying to make everybody have smaller cap hits. It's Mr. Tom Brady with a cap hit of $14 million. Nobody comes even within $1 million of him that is even remotely close to him. The next cheapest guy is Nick Foles. The next more expensive guy is Andy Dalton. And the next cheapest quarterback who's actually elite would be someone like Ben Roethlisberger or Russell Wilson, who get paid $18 million, or rather have an $18 million cap hit. $14 million is $10 million less than Carson Palmer, Joe Flacco, and Tony Romo each go against the cap. Tom Brady, $14 million. There was no doubt this was going to be the guy. Value for money, you can't argue against it. So that is our offense. The entire thing costs $70.2 million against the cap, and that leaves us with $85 million for the rest of the team. You subtract our special teams guys, and it's about $80 million for the defense, so $10 million more than we've spent on the offense here. We start with our free safety, Harrison Smith. Great value for money, $7.5 million against the cap. But when you're talking value for money, you cannot beat Landon Collins. A mere $1.6 million against the cap for a guy who was very much in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year last year. And those are our safeties, Harrison Smith, Landon Collins. Now moving on to the linebackers, and I'm looking at a 3-4 scheme here. I decided to go 3-4. One, to make it more interesting. Two, I think it's slightly more versatile, but that's irrelevant. And we're going to start with our inside linebackers. CJ Mosley, nice cheap rookie contract, $2.7 million against the cap. And then I absolutely broke the bank on the next guy. Luke Kuechly, the highest paid middle linebacker in the NFL, $12.7 million against the cap. But I knew what I needed on this team was a sheriff in the middle of the field there at middle linebacker. Luke Kuechly was key to this team. And that's why we've gone out and given up a large chunk for Luke Kuechly when Bobby Wagner takes a lot less. But it just, for me, had to be Luke Kuechly. At right outside linebacker, I've got Whitney Merciless, moved over from left outside linebacker. I'm sure he can deal with the position change from one side of the field to the other. $6 million against the cap, that's pretty good value for money. But again, the left outside linebacker is a rookie contract, so we are paying him significantly less than he is worth. Defensive Player of the Year, Khalil Mack at left outside linebacker. $5.9 million against the cap. So our linebackers here cost us $27.5 million against the cap, but I'm pretty sure these guys are worth it. Now onto the cornerbacks. We needed a shutdown cornerback, at least for cornerback number 1. Richard Sherman was the guy I went for. $13.6 million against the cap. Now you've got quite a few choices there. Patrick Peterson has pretty much an identical contract to him. But I decided Richard Sherman for me was the guy I was going to go for, and we could afford to go a little more expensive for our number 1 because I knew number 2 was going to be a bargain. The NFL Surprise Player of the Year, which isn't an award but really should be, Casey Hayward. We can pick him up for just $5 million against the cap. That is nothing. And now for our nickel cornerback, I wanted to go very specific to nickel guys, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity of adding Marcus Peters, who only costs $2.6 million against the cap. These are our cornerbacks right here: Richard Sherman, Casey Hayward, Marcus Peters, and the only position group left is the defensive line. Now I am going for a 3-4 defensive line, which of course means a nose tackle, a defensive tackle, and a defensive end. The nose tackle I went for was Danny Shelton. Now this was a bit of a money decision because money is getting tight at this point. Danny Shelton only costs $3.1 million against the cap, but I also think he's a very good player. And now for the defensive tackle position, we've got a guy we need to move from being an official defensive tackle to left end. Aaron Donald on a rookie contract, only $3.2 million against the cap. And now as you can see, we've still got a decent amount of money left here. And that's because a bona fide edge rusher was at the top of my list. Right behind an elite quarterback was an edge rusher that can wreck an offensive game plan. That's how my list looked. Edge rusher was next, so I didn't mind shelling out the $14.5 million against the cap for J.J. Watt, our defensive end in this 3-man line. The entire line only cost $20.9 million against the cap, and that's almost it for this team, except for we can't forget about the kickers and the punters. Our punter is Johnny Hekker, surprisingly cheap, only $2.3 million against the cap, and that is still cheap compared to some of the hits that other punters are getting. And our kicker, Adam Vinatieri, $2.7 million against the cap. And that is the team completed. Now we could of course have a long snapper in there, but to be fair, you could probably find one for just one of those $465,000 contracts. This is the team. The defense costs $78.9 million against the cap. The offense, $70 million. And we do have $900,000 to spare, but I did look around. I did see what position can we improve for an extra $1 million. Pretty much nothing. In terms of the difference of $1 million, you won't find a player in any one of these positions that's significantly better. I even looked at having Bobby Wagner instead of Luke Kuechly. What can we do with $6-7 million more dollars? and again, no one position was improved drastically enough for it to be worth dropping Luke Kuechly, so that is $900,000. Our backups would exclusively be fringe players in the NFL, no decent backups whatsoever for any of these positions. Of course, the only way you could ever really bring this team together in real life would be to trade away every single pick you've got for the next 10-15 years, and then maybe, just maybe, you can get all these players and keep them all for a year or two before their rookie contracts for most of them run out or all the other guys retire. Now, there are probably a billion different other teams you can build, obviously, that fit within the salary cap, and if you are willing to spend the time and build one, I would love to see it. I've got the link for SpotRack and the salary cap hit page for it down in the description. If you do want to do this, you can use that to look at it. If you can build a team that you think rivals this one for that amount, I think the best way, obviously, to get that to me to have a look at would be via Twitter. I genuinely would be honestly impressed if anybody actually goes out of the way to do this, but if you happen to, there is a way that I would definitely look at it. This was actually a lot of fun though. It is a challenge. It's not that easy. You have to make some tactical decisions. This obviously is not just a group of the best players in every position, although for some positions it really is. It's certainly not that hard to pay for a ridiculously good team under the salary cap. It's just very hard to get them all on your team at the same time.